Over the last 10 years, I've made almost €1 million, averaging out to about 100 grand a year. And for the first 6 of those 10 years, I was really bad with money.
I got them in emerald green, and they have these like diamondy things on the front, and they just feel so beautiful and they're so comfortable to wear. And
she bought this coat and it cost her €1,000. Jeez, I'm even joking.
Biggest regret of my life. I could have bought a cheap car.
I wouldn't mind if it was nice.
Let us first rewind to my early 20s. I was surviving on €188 a week. I was receiving government support to attend university because I don't come from a wealthy family, and I almost always ended up having to borrow an extra €20 to €50 a week from my dad just to get by. Back then, to buy like a new shade of lipstick or a nice dress for a night out, that was a huge deal, even just to go to the cinema. Thankfully, I never got a credit card, and the most debt I ever had was a few grand. That little loan, I got a loan for about 4 grand at one point, took me so many years to pay back due to soaring interest rates, and I decided never again. Going forward, I will only spend what I can afford to spend without going into debt. I became self-employed as an online creator, and I set up a company, and over the years I did everything from big modeling jobs, huge brand deals with massive companies. I'd get paid to do talks and consulting and throw in some book deals and a line of journals that sold out like 3 times. So I had several income streams in my 20s, but I lost the run of myself, not just a bit but a lot. The worst habit I formed in my 20s perhaps was being absolutely shit with money. So look, I'd discovered the law of attraction, right? So I was all about my mantras, like I'm a money magnet and everything I touch turns to gold. My favorite one was money comes easily and I will always have enough of it. Here's the question: did the universe hear me, or was I just the right person at the right time, in the right place? Fancy hotel stays became the norm, and going out to nice restaurants all the time and flying all over the world, buying everything I wanted. I just imagined that my bank account was just like bottomless. But guess what? The world doesn't really care about your manifesting. There's pandemics. You know, when you have children, you can't work so much. A cost of living crisis will just come about, and all of a sudden you're paying about £1,000 a month to heat your house. Oh, houses, yes. Buying a house. That was on my vision board for years and years. It is something I desperately wanted throughout my 20s, but there was, like here in Ireland, the rate of change of the cost of houses from like the 80s, disgusting. Why we live in an attic at home in Thomas's parents' house.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
if you too want to buy a home in Ireland, highly recommend this book. We were advised to buy somewhere that we'd be happy enough to get stuck in. The property market here right now is a shit show, but yeah, this is unreal.
So there's little you with your money, and then there's like the system and everything. The odds are really stacked against us. But I didn't want to give up on that dream. I was 32 when I got the keys. Thing is, to do that, so to pay a whole down payment for a house by myself, after paying for a wedding, I am married and we got a mortgage, but my husband had student debt. So I was like, I'm gonna focus on just building up my money. I had to make some changes because lenders like to see that you are consistent and reliable before they give you a mortgage. I also wanted to have a family and I wanted to be able to provide for my family. So my money habits have changed drastically, and I'm going to share those with you in this video. It's very highly requested. It is not financial advice. It is just me sharing my experiences, as I always do. Before we do the dive into the list, I want to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. That is BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, because they are the world's largest therapy service. It's 100% online, and they have licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues, including financial stress, because money concern is one of the biggest sources of stress for people in general, and it can lead to anxiety and depression and physical symptoms. BetterHelp also offers financial assistance. The website will prompt you to check your eligibility for financial aid before you pay. If, like me, you need therapy, I certainly do. Yeah, I can't get out much because I have a baby. I think BetterHelp is brilliant because you can just message your therapist anytime and you can arrange live sessions with them at your own convenience. Best of all, there's no additional charge if you want to switch therapists. And this is something that is so much more complicated when you're doing in-person therapy. It can be messy and time-consuming and very expensive, but BetterHelp has a network of 25,000 therapists. So you can be sure that you will find someone that you'll click with and they will be there to listen to you and to help you. And you can get 10% off your first month of therapy with the link down in my description box. Spawn done, now on to the points. I have literally written them out. I know and keep track of how much I spend every week and every month. And I did not do this for years and years and years, and a lot of people don't do it. I know it sounds really simple, but studies show that 3 in 5 people don't know what they spent last month, and Gen Z is the least likely to be aware of what they're spending, followed by millennials.
There are loads of budget tracking apps and stuff like that, but you really don't need anything fancy. You can just open up your notes app and write out, like, say, mortgage, the date of each month that gets paid, and you can note down the total of each food receipt, like all your bills, everything. It's so much easier to I just love me a list.
Going back to what I said during the sponsored segment, like, because money is such a stress for so many people, I think a lot of us can put off looking at the full picture because we're scared of what we're going to find if we look at, like, all of the times we're tapping our card, or if we add up the total cost of the amount of takeaways we bought over the past month, including just, you know, getting coffees here and there. And that it's possible that some people just don't budget because they don't think it's actually necessary. And now look, I hate the whole,
if you want to buy a house, stop buying avocado toast.
I hate that attitude as much as the next person does, and I don't believe that. I really feel like you have to live a little. You also have to weigh it up with just your mental health and, you know, staying afloat and just having a bit of spice in your life.
This table is from that book I showed you earlier, How to Buy a Home in Ireland, but it just shows you how much money you can actually save by swapping coffee shop or takeaway to homemade. Simply having an awareness of these things is just really important, not to obsess over them, but just to understand that little expenses over time do add up to a lot.
Pro tip on this: marry a miser. Go to a bar and date the person who spends a lot of time talking about not using the dryer and hanging up the clothes. Marry that person who regularly sits down and goes through the memberships that they have, like Audible, Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, like, and questions, you know, which of these am I actually using? Because this is adding up to quite a lot of money. I have absorbed a lot of habits from my husband Thomas. They say that you become the most like the people you spend the most time around. Very true when it comes to counting your pennies, I tell you that. Next, I embraced reduce, reuse, recycle. When it comes to fashion can be an expensive hobby. Who remembers the coat fiasco when I started making the money and I went and blew $1,000 on a Burberry coat? Shoot me. I bought the shoes from the Sex and the City movie as a treat to myself for publishing my first book. But like, if I had kept on with that and that had become a habit, just like buying expensive shoes, I would have become the old lady who lived in her shoes. What I mean with this point, I buy clothes way less often and I rewear the clothes that I have a lot. Another thing that I absorbed from my husband, like, you've probably seen him in the same clothes like 1,000,000 times on my channel. He just does not buy clothes, that man. He's like, it fits me, it's grand. The pressure from Instagram to like always be wearing something new that you've never been seen in before, it's so bad for your wallet. I suppose on this point as well, like, you know, when you see big sales and discounts and stuff, sometimes that tempts you into buying stuff that you wouldn't have bought otherwise. So, you know, if I work with a brand, BetterHelp, in this instance for this video, like, that discount is great if you're already looking into therapy and online therapy. With clothes, a discount is great if you're looking for a certain item, and this hack that I'm going to share with you will change your life. So open an incognito, like private browser window on your computer, and then when you go to a website, usually it will give you like a pop-up of like 10% off, 15% off, 20% off if you're lucky, because it doesn't have any information on you. It doesn't know if you've been to the website before.
I got this tip from Caroline Winkler. She's literally my favorite YouTuber right now, but shout out to her for changing my life with this.
All you have to do is open your private browsing windows. 15% off. There's my pop-up. What did I tell you?
Yeah, be thrifty and don't treat expensive hobby stuff as like throwaway, like clothing. The next point leads on from this. Go for quality over convenience. A lot of stuff nowadays that's made is shite quality, terrible, made to throw away and be very quickly replaced. You see it with fast furniture, fast fashion. Fine, buy it if you're actually going to use it a lot. But you know, do look into secondhand or like antique stuff. Our dining table is a great example. It was €700 for an antique dining table, loads of chairs, found it on Facebook Marketplace. We're gonna have it for years and years and years and years. And there were table and chair sets in like, you know, your bog standard furniture shop that were crap and that were so much more expensive. And I know that they're, you know, they were kind of like in right now with the current styles that are popular or whatever, but you know, go for timeless, go for built to last. If you're gonna splurge on the little black dress, you know, the thing that you're gonna go back to time and time again. That's a huge habit I am forming. When I am gonna spend money and buy something designer or something, I make sure that it's something that's gonna get a lot of use. It works out cheaper in the long term if you're not going to keep rebuying the bloody thing. Like the curtains we bought recently for our bedroom and our living room were disgustingly expensive, but they're staying there forever. We will decorate the room around those curtains if we have to. Another habit is I have become a meal service convert. I've tried Drop Chef in Ireland, I've tried HelloFresh in Ireland. It has massively reduced the amount of takeaways that we buy as a family. In my 20s, I was eating out so often, depending on the week. Yeah, if you can't afford a meal box service, I opt for that because I don't like having to meal plan and spend all that time. Like, to me, time is money. If you really don't have the money for a meal box service, meal plan, meal prep, batch cook. Do things that will prevent you from reaching for that phone when you're just like, oh, I just want something, I'm just feeling lazy. Because we've all been there. Next is another one that sounds very simple, but it's also something a lot of people don't do, according to studies, is setting aside 10% of your paycheck into a savings account. It looks so good to a bank if you are ever going to go for a mortgage. It's also just a really, really good habit to get into. Building a rainy day fund, you know. But if you do live week to week, which I've done before, for years and years and years, I lived week to week. I know what that's like. I'm not talking out my arse here, and I know that it can be icky talking about money. I know it can, but I have had that experience of like, yeah, just not having very much. And I do still wish someone had drilled this into me, the importance of setting aside a little bit, even if it's like a 10 or 20 quid, whatever it is. Research has looked at this, and typically what people will do is they will restructure, if they're like tight for money, will restructure how they spend their money, will be hawk-eyed at ways to cut their spending, and will maybe start a side hustle, will look for ways to add alternate streams of income, like maybe minding kids couple nights a week for people, like babysitting, anything like that. There are brilliant videos on YouTube about how to earn money online as well in your spare time, like on top of your job. And I know it sucks, like hustle culture, the hamster wheel, it all sucks, but that's the world we're living in, the system, capitalism. And I'm sharing this and making this video because I'm sure a lot of people are like me and want to be able to live comfortably. I never had aspirations to be wealthy and rich. I've met too many multimillionaires who are the most miserable people I've ever met in my life. I'm not saying all multimillionaires are, but I just know that money doesn't make people happy. I know that money isn't the be all end all of life, but money makes life easier, and I hate when people ignore that and are like, oh, you don't need money to be happy. Like, money helps. Money helps. And part of that point, which should be its own standalone point, I suppose, is always have a buffer. Having an emergency fund frees up a huge amount of mental energy, and this can take time to build. In my 20s, I kept all of my money in my bank account, but I would just like spend. My attitude shift in my 30s has been to take a certain number. So the minimum emergency fund that they advise that you aim to build up is 3 months' wages, just for an emergency, you know, like what happened during COVID, where people just lost their jobs and entire career paths had to change and stuff. Having an emergency fund of like a few months' wages just in case kind of thing, it makes life so much less stressful. It really does. No one ever really talked to me about that before, so that's kind of why I wanted to mention it. So what I do is I have a number in my bank account that I treat as zero. So you know, if we're going to town on home renovation stuff and I'm like trying to figure out, can I afford to pay the carpenter this amount, or can we afford to get this kind of a paint or this kind of a floor for this room or whatever, I'll always look at my emergency fund and that's zero. So anything above that is what we have free to spend. So when I'm saving money and stuff like that, obviously that's like separate, but the money that's just left over after savings, after bills, after everything like that, we can play around with that, but the emergency fund does not get touched. And the last habit that I am forming is learning about investing. Your girl still doesn't have a pension. I'm setting one up. This year that is happening. I have been having too many conversations with people about the importance of pensions, and you know, my dad said to me, he was around my age now, I'm 33, and he was around my age when he started his pension, and he just wishes he had started it sooner. Time goes by like that, and the state pension in my country anyway is really not all that much. So you know, you do have to look long term and look at the big picture. For years and years, my management company were like, you know, we'll set you up with a pension. I was like, oh, but the thought of like putting all that money into an account that I can't even go near for so long, I kept seeing my money in the now. Like, I want access to that money now. Like, I want to, you know, buy a house, and I just couldn't cope with the thought of spending so much on a pension. But pensions are really tax efficient. If your money is just sitting in your bank account, it's just sitting there. And you could think of it that it's like losing value because of inflation, and it can't handle the weight of inflation. I know there are like savings accounts nowadays where you can like build up a bit of interest. I need to learn about all this stuff anyway. Investments, I've been following accounts online about investing, not just pensions, but just like all forms of investing. Like, we've bought books about it. I'm constantly looking at ways to have more passive income, which is just where you're making income by just living your life. It's something we all really need to be thinking about. And I think because it can be so intimidating when you don't understand it, like, why are we not taught this stuff in school? I swear, some of the nonsense that I learned in school that's still drilled into my brain. Like, I can say a prayer in Irish, but I can't speak Irish. Orna her taranav, gane for danam, godagadaríocht, gane for the heller an tallav, mar nain taranav, orna ran le hul tur dun nu, agus matun ar veka, mar wahamid dar vekun fein, agus not like shini gahu ser shin ulk. It's something like that, right? That sounds like I can speak Irish. Having a notion what I just said. They could have just instead drilled in the definition of a pension and how a pension works. So I put that last because that's the habit I'm currently working on. But if you have anything you want to add to this list, or anything you want to talk about to do with finances, insights, wisdom, opinions, comment down below. I will be reading through all of your comments, and thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. If you need to chat to a professional who, you know, is not a family member, is not going to judge you, will help you to walk through your problems. I couldn't recommend therapy enough. I've had to do therapy multiple times throughout my life. I'm signed up again because parenting is getting to me. So that is my financial habits I'm forming in my 30s video. Let me know what other habits videos you'd like me to do, because I've started up doing these. My habits I formed in my 20s always did really well, and I did a skincare one recently that is at nearly 500,000 views, so I know yous like this format. I'm gonna go. Mwah. Thank you for watching. Give a thumbs up if you found this helpful, and I'll see you again if you subscribe. Otherwise, just go. Don't care.